Well, here we are, Writing Wednesday again. Let's see if I'm live. Looks like I am. I wanted to talk today about the writer's notebook. And this is a more important practice than most people are aware. People don't realize what's involved with becoming a writer, becoming an artist. There's a tremendous amount of training going on. You don't become an Olympic skier, just decide to, and then go out and hit the slopes, and suddenly you're great. You're great. You know, it doesn't work like that. You have to build yourself as a writer, and that's where a lot of people, they have trouble bridging the idea of themselves as a writer and the actual craft. They immediately get into writing a story. They want to write a novel. I've never skied the bunny hill, but I want to do Olympic slalom racing. No, that's not how it works. First you learn to snowplow, and then you learn your parallel turns. And that's what interests me as a writer, is the actual skills, gaining the actual skills to create something vivid, original, and worth your reader's time. So one of the most valuable tools we have is the writer's notebook. I carry around a book like this in my purse. Here's the newest one. Just if you like a littler book, something like this. And then when you get home, or every so often, you write up what you have written in your books, and you put them in a bigger notebook, like this, because you will begin to use that book. Not only is it training, the writer's notebook training you to observe, and observe closely, but then you take your observations and you put them in a place you can use them. Because what happens is, if you're describing a summer day in your story, in your novel, and it is mid-December in, say, Minnesota, it's very hard to remember the details of a summer's day. So you get that down. You get down. Whenever you drive around, you see, or walk around, you see something that captures your imagination, stop and describe it. Really try to describe it, and then save what you have, because you'll never open these again. There's a huge pile of them. So you take all of the different sense phenomenon. So I have these books. This one, say, is indexed. Well, this one isn't indexed. That's different. Let's say this one. Yeah. So this is indexed. Exercises, portraits. I see people that interest me, and I write about them. This one will have buildings that have interested me, the way the light falls on them. I have one that every sense has its own section. Taste, touch, sound, light. They all have, there are 5 of them. What am I missing? They all have things to create. They're tools that you could create a vivid, real world. The difficulty with our times is people spend too much time on the screens, too much time taking in other people's creations and calling that experience. Now, as a writer, your job is this is your instrument, and your job is to go out and create, encounter real reality directly, not looking on a screen, but going out and feeling the weather, smelling what's around, hearing what's around. And challenging yourself to describe it. One of the important exercises that I give students is to do the weather. Do the weather. Go outside, different times of day, different seasons, and say what is the sound of 7:30 in the morning on a Tuesday morning in February? What are the sounds? What do I see? What do I hear? What's blooming? What's the name? Get the names of the flora and fauna. If you don't know the names of the trees, you're going to be behind the curve. So you find out these things. What is that tree? What is that, weed? And capture it, and then you put it in a notebook. I have one that's called Nothing But Weather, because I'm not going to remember a rag thrown on a clothesline or on the roof of the house in the summer, and it dries very crispy. That smell, that feel, I'm not going to remember that in January. So you keep notebooks of these kind of phenomenon. For instance, I pulled something out, an old notebook. How fast the clouds are moving against the sky as I'm waiting for a coffee house to open. Feels like the sky is a big wheel being turned by giant thumbs. That's pretty good. So I would put that in weather, or I could put that in landscape. The basket weave of the palm trunks, their long beards carefully trimmed at 12 feet. This is the kind of thing that makes writing vivid. We are a million-year-old sense receptor. Everything we have as writers, as human beings, is to take in physical reality. And we spend all our time in front of screens, and screens do not do it. I once had a conversation with a 5-year-old about going to the zoo. And, and seeing the elephants. He was into elephants. And I say, oh, have you seen the elephants? And he says, oh, yeah, I've seen an elephant. I go, oh, yeah, you have? He said, yeah, on TV. And he really thought that this flat screen thing that he'd seen was the same thing as a direct encounter with an elephant. You don't get the scale, you don't get the smell, you don't see the little individual hairs. Where is it like where is the hide thick? Where is it surprisingly thin? What does the eye look like? What does it smell like? And also, on a screen, you don't have the encounter where the elephant comes up to you and is investigating you. This is something that too many writers do, something that in school we used to call this dry labbing, which is when you take a chemistry class or some kind of science class and you know how the experiment is supposed to turn out. So you don't do the experiment, you write it up because you know how it was supposed to turn out, but you didn't actually do the work. And too many writers out there dry labbing. If you wonder why you're not profoundly affected by people's work, why it's not pulling you in, it's often because they don't engage with physical reality. So you want that direct encounter with real reality. Most people don't have the privilege that you do of having a reason to stop and look twice, stop and look 3 times. They don't have the time. They've got to pick up the kid. They've got to, clickety-clack, go watch TV or whatever they're doing. This is our obligation as well as our privilege, that we do stop, we do think again. We talked about cliche and building fresh images last time. How do I build a fresh image of this? So I can remember when I started all this, with my little notebook, I'd seen a rank of trees, of palm trees, tall, skinny palm trees in a row. And I stopped the car and I said, okay, now I'm going to describe that. How do I describe that? And the first thing that came out was, what is in a row? Soldiers in a row. Okay, what is it? The next thing that came out was mops. They look like mops with their moppy heads. Have I heard that before? Yes. Okay. What do they look like? Oh, Rod Stewart, that hair. Had I heard that before? Yes. And I sat there in my car and described those the way those trees were growing and leaning. Like, what is in a row, say soldiers, but we talked about writing your way out of cliche. They were like soldiers mustered out of bed in the middle of the night and drunk and trying to check their vertical, and they were all a little off, but they were looking at each other, so they all looked like they were in a row. So I got a fresh image. You want to keep really good track of, noticing not just what we're allowed to notice, which is the visuals. Generally speaking, we live in a world where we have visuals, we have screens, and we have some sound, although we tend to produce sound to drown out the sound of real reality. So for a while, just stop all that ambient music to drown out what's real reality and pay attention to what you're really hearing. What does it really sound like? What does, sound is a really interesting sense in that it's probably the most dimensional sense. You can hear something up very close to you, or you can hear something very far away. And when you can move between scales of landscape like that, I can hear, say, I can do this, I can hear it very close up, but I can also hear traffic out on the 5 freeway out there. So that creates a dimensional world, because I can go between the sound of paper flicking in my hand to distant sound. And people believe that the world exists because I can move through the layers. The most intimate sense is touch, because it has to be right up against your skin. All the most intense sensations are touch. The most pain and the most pleasure comes from touch. And children are always told, look but don't touch. Touch is not good. Touch is engagement. Whereas you can look. So we're a world of voyeurs. We have a hard time engaging. So make sure to assign yourself some exercises of touching things. Feel when you go out and do the weather. Touch the stones. What does it feel like? Try to get your mind around the various sensations involved. Taste. You can get a lot of memory out of taste. The senses are a bridge between the world and the world inside here. And you can access memory and imagination through the senses better than anything else. Like, one of the exercises I do is I have students close their eyes and I give them a piece of cloth. Say this. And you close your eyes and feel it. What is it? It's a piece of felt. But what is it? Where is it? When is it? And then I come up with, a reindeer herder, and the felt boots and the felt jacket. And when is it? Well, winter, of course. And before I know, I have a story going on. I also can remember making a skirt out of felt like this. It was yellow. It had pink crazy daisies on it. It was really ugly, but I loved that skirt. But I can remember what I imagined it would be. I can capture the state of mind. So fabric is really good. And just train yourself to notice textures. Really pay attention. How much can you get out of feeling that rock? What are the different textures? And notice that texture is an action as well as a thing in itself. If I take a piece of paper and I feel it like this, it feels very smooth, right? But if I go like this and rub my arm with it, that hurts. It's scrubby. So gesture is part of touch. Sound, the dimensionality of sound. A great exercise is to do a page of voices. Watch television or watch movies. And when somebody somebody's voice captures you, stop and see if you can describe that person's voice, the texture of their voice. One of the ways that we describe any sense phenomenon is synesthesia. So we describe one sense in terms of another sense. So a man's voice could be sandy. Well, is it sandy? I mean, is he coughing up pieces of sand? No. But we know what sand feels like, so we can imagine what a sandy American voice would sound like. So, it's just like read a wine review. The wine was sharp. The wine was, was it really sharp? Am I going to need a tetanus shot? No. But we know what sharp feels like. We describe a taste in terms of a color, in terms of a sound. The best words are words that take in more than one sense. That's what we call rich language. So to say something is yellow uses one sense, right? But to say it is lemon gives you get the taste, you get the visual, but you get the taste. Lemon, we know what lemon tastes like too. It smells. We know the crisp acidic smell of lemon. So you get three. When you say lemon sky, that's really interesting. Plum, there's a reason why Homer, used the wine dark sea. You have to be careful on your cliches, but you can invent these. And then you save them in a notebook. Let's see. Here's my notebook of some senses. And I use this in my writing all the time. Here are some sounds. Water lapping, sound of leaves dropping onto the deck in the dark, or a small animal creepy in the fog. Sounds of the neighbors, click and whir of air conditioning. That's a summer sound because everybody's windows are open. The air conditioning is going. People coming home late. The sound of automatic sprinklers in the night. Pots of a midnight touch, a dog walk. Mysterious nocturnal crunchings of leaves, squeal of brakes. Who of the neighbors is still awake? Who leaves the house at 6 a.m. and who is returning now? Sounds. I have, this is plants. I'm really into plants, making sure I know the names of plants. Here's smells. Smell of night blooming jasmine mixing oddly with the smell of wood fires. The bouquet of perfumes at a gathering of women, a writers' group in the spring. Mostly women, or is it the jasmine of the unseasonably hot February night? A full head of garlic, maybe, and then I said maybe some character cooks garlic. Name 3 smells that absolutely distinguish my parents' house. Pittosporum trees, tension and laundry. My house, coffee, dog, cigarettes. My house in Colorado, wood stove, raw wood, apples, wet dog. Grandmother's house. And really develop your notebook so you have an orchestra of sense impressions that when you write, you're in your room, you're not alone. I mean, the problem with why so many, a lot of writing is so bad is that we're alone in a room by ourselves, and where's the sense impression coming from unless you've done the work? So you want to get that, capture all that sense impression and make sure you have it. And don't assume that you know things. No cliches, no assumptions, no dry labbing. I make my students for the first 5 weeks of their of working with them just go out and collect sense impressions and learn how to make them work together to build a landscape. Notice that light. Any photographer, any artist will tell you light we don't actually see objects. We see light falling on objects. So notice where the light, always notice where the light is coming from. Don't just describe objects. Describe the light, how it hits them, where it highlights, where the shadows, when you're describing things. And I urge you to develop notebooks, keep a notebook with you at all times, and when anything strikes you, don't just figure, oh, I'm going to remember that. No, you're not going to remember that. It's going to be gone, gone, gone. So stop and write it down. Even if you don't open this, which you will have looked twice and remembered a little bit more, and training yourself to notice what sense impressions are coming in and what they're doing to you, what they're sparking. Learning how to describe the world. My daughter went hiking in Green Mesa, Utah. It's just very beautiful canyon lands, and they stood at the edge of this incredible mesa, looking out at all this broken landscape, red and green, beautiful stuff. And somebody said, "There are no words to describe this." And my daughter said, "Oh yeah, but there are. You just don't have them." She didn't say that. I said that. There are words to describe. If you want to see what description looks like, read The Waves by Virginia Woolf. And every chapter begins with a description of the way of waves and light. And it is spectacular. So this is my talk for today, and we'll see you. All right.